Welcome to All Creatures Podcast. This is Chris.
And I'm Angie.
Today, a much beloved reptile from down under, which we're going to talk about, as this past week was experiencing insane temperatures as you guys freeze in the United States. But this reptile is a survivor and is a fan favorite and is now part of your home.
Yes, we adopted a bearded dragon a few weeks ago. My boys have been asking one for years, and I've been kind of, well, let's see if you can help walk the dog and change the cat litter and that kind of thing. I love bearded dragons. I worked with them at the zoo. They're such a fun education animal. They're super cool and chill, and we'll get into all sorts of fun behaviors that they do. They wave their arms, and what they eat. They're a cool creature. And they, as far as lizards go, because I worked with fat-tailed geckos, iguanas, do not make it pet. I would take a fat-tailed gecko over and a bearded dragon over an iguana any day. So yes, they're just a really iconic creature. We'll talk all about that. I mean, basically picture a tiny dragon lounging on your couch. It'll puff out a spiky black beard to scare off enemies. They're like 10 times its size. And it's the ultimate like chill punk rock Zen master lizard. And it's a fun pet. Now, I say that with a caveat we'll talk about later on in the podcast as far as having exotic animals as pets, because they are still considered exotic. They're not a domesticated pet like our dogs, our cats, our horses, and the typical pets that we have in our family. And if you notice, I opened with that we adopted a bearded dragon because there are a lot of them that people get and they realize they are a pain in the keister to take care of. They are not easy. Any reptile is not for beginners usually because of their lighting needs, their humidity needs, their temperature needs, their food needs. We'll go into the diet, but a bearded dragon is an omnivore. So we're cutting up salads every morning and we have live worms in our house. That's why I made my boys wait several years so they could help me care for them. And it was so funny. Zachary, he says, "Mom, aren't you glad that we got a bearded dragon? And why don't you think we waited too long?" And I said, "Well, now that you've taken care of it for a few weeks, don't you think it's a good thing I waited?" And he agreed.
Yes.
He agreed.
Absolutely. Yep.
And my son Xander actually did a whole PowerPoint presentation to present to our family on how to take care of them. And so
That's awesome.
it's definitely been a group effort. So and it is crazy though. If you've done your research or you work with a local pet shop or a herpetologist or something and decide that it might be a good pet for your family, just keep doing your research, maybe wait on it a little bit. But yeah, they're so fun. I learned a lot this week because I know the husbandry facts already, but I really got to dive in deep with their physiology and why is their beard black and how do they do that. And they have this crazy survival hack that harkens back to one of your favorites, honey badgers.
Okay.
Wait for that one. That's a fun fact.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah. It's going to be a good podcast, so I hope you stick around.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack with them. And I'm glad you opened with them as pets because it takes a lot to make sure that they thrive and they're happy and
oh my goodness,
well taken care of.
Yeah. And then we'll talk about their longevity, but I'm thinking I'm going to have to do this for the next 15 years.
Yeah, it's a lot. But so you said they're exotic, and they are. The bearded dragons are native to Australia, and there's actually 8 species of bearded dragon. And I'm guessing the one you got is a central bearded dragon because that's the typical one. Yeah, that's under human care around the world. Very popular pet to have.
So
yeah, they are. But and the good news with them. In the wild, least concern, but there are pressures. There are pressures on them, what's going on in Australia. And we'll talk a little bit about that and like this big heat wave and then you are being frozen up north, what's going on and how that impacts them. because these guys, they survive in some of the harshest environments. Last year, when we flew back home to see Pip's family, flew over Australia, and I haven't been in the Outback. I mean, I've been in the Outback off the coast, a few hours inland, but in the central part of Australia, I mean, it's just desert. It's just as far as you can see, red desert in every direction for, hundreds of, if not thousands of kilometers or miles. And this is where a lot of the bearded dragons live, but then they are on coastal regions. So we'll talk about, where their varied habitat. That being said, they have survived the extremes for millions of years and adapted, and
Yeah.
they're resilient. They're just very
Yeah.
resilient.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So let's describe them, and then we'll go through the ranges of the different species. A lot of species, but a lot of similarities. I mean, there are differences within the species.
Yeah. Well, I mean, in general, I think my earlier description is having a tiny dragon on your couch with a beard that can puff up. Is pretty accurate, actually. But when you Google a bearded dragon, or if you look at a picture of it, they're darling. But they are a medium-sized lizard that are pretty broad-bodied, and they have triangle-shaped heads. And their abdomen body region is really round, and they have short legs and a very long tail. So they do look a lot almost like maybe a tinier Komodo dragon, but like a more triangular head. And then they also have scaly armor. So from head to tail, they have small spiny scales, especially around their abdomen and kind of their throat region, that give them a very rough dragon-like textures. And when it comes to the colors of the bearded dragon, well, a lot of it depends. Our bearded dragon, being a central bearded dragon, or so we think, is more tan, light brown, grayish in color, but they can have more red hues and gold hues and gray hues, and there's even some like white morphs, I think. But the main sandy, light brown, tan color makes sense because, well, they're a desert dwelling animal, right? And then these spines and kind of rough texture help them blend in even more with rocks and things like this. And other than that, they do have claws that help them grip because they are climbers. They're mostly found on top of rocks and basking and things like that. They're mostly will climb up on rocks, but they can be semi-arboreal if they need to get away from a predator, or just to bask to get closer to the sun. It's fascinating to me. The recommended basking temperature for a bearded dragon under human care is about the hot and cool spot. So the hot spot is about 110 degrees Fahrenheit.
Yeah.
I apologize. I don't know what that is in Celsius. But yeah, so then there's their signature feature, which of course is this beard. And what it is an expandable throat pouch that's lined with dark spiky scales that it can puff out, and it'll also turn jet black in color when the bearded dragon's either threatened or showing off to another male or courting a female. So pretty punk rock. And I definitely spent probably too much time doing a deep dive on the black beard of the bearded dragon.
Yeah,
so
it's cute.
Yes, and both males and females have this throat pouch that can puff up and can change color. Of course, males will be a little bit more prominent with how often they do it and how brilliant it looks when they do it.
When we talk about size, of the 8 species that we think we have the central bearded dragon, the one that we're kind of focused on, the eastern and western bearded dragon, the dwarf, the Aurorlos bearded dragon, Rankins, or the pygmy bearded dragon, the Kimberley bearded dragon. The Kimberley is supposed to be beautiful. And then Nullarbor bearded dragon. So of the 8 we think we have a species. Sizes, the eastern tends to be the biggest, up to 24 inches long or 60 centimeters. But the central is right behind that, 18 to 24 inches, 45 to 60 centimeters.
Yeah, we got a pretty big boy. So about 18 inches, I would think. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then the dwarf is only 10 to 12 inches. So it's half that's body, half that's tail. So 24 inches, 12 inches or 30 centimeters is the body, and then you have this really long tail. So they're really, really beautiful animals. And when you look at the range, pretty much the entire continent of Australia, except in that northern part where it's really tropical.
Okay.
I've been up there. It's a lot of rainforest, and probably I wouldn't say too warm, just somewhere where they just didn't quite evolve. But from Queensland down to Victoria, all the way across to Western Australia, you have these 8 species. The eastern is obviously in the east, and so that's where I've spent a lot of my time with work. The western, obviously, in the west, and then all in between. And then your central is going to be not central east. So Queensland, Northwest Territory, Northern Territory, South Australia, and New South Wales. So it's in that region. And I've been in that habitat. Just recently I had to go for some work out there in the bush, and really, I love Australia. Just a beautiful country with incredible people, and that's where this bearded dragon
I say,
lives
and
now.
really cool
Yeah.
creatures. So,
Yes. Oh, so many fun animals over there that we've covered. Uh, Now, Angie's talked a lot about what a great addition it's made to her family, but when we look at it from a conservation point of view or an ecological point of view, bearded dragons are important. They, like Angie said, they're an omnivore. They're kind of nature's eat anything, help
yeah.
keep everything kind of in check while serving as prey for other species. So they do have an ecological role. I mean, it's important to care about them from that standpoint, correct?
Absolutely. I mean, and then the other thing too is being omnivores, they will consume fruits and berries and they'll swallow those seeds and disperse them across the outback, which is hard to do because the outback is so big and so vast. And so that's pretty cool that they play this gardener role that other animals we see oftentimes like in more, I don't know, tropical regions play. So I love that they do that. And then Chris mentioned that, of course, being somewhere in the middle of the food chain, they can be a meal for larger predators. But for those of you that aren't fans of maybe some of the spiders and insects that they have in Australia, or smaller reptiles, or even rodents, potentially, depending on if they're really small, your bearded dragon will clean that up too. So they're not picky. They really are a generalist omnivore, which is probably one of the reasons why they've been so successful. It makes them a little bit of a workout under human care because, like I
Yeah,
said, they
yeah,
have to have
yeah.
their all the different foods. But the other thing too is that when we think about climate change and climate adaptation models, with everything getting hotter, I think the bearded dragon, which is a reptile tied to basically really precise thermal and moisture conditions, I think it'll be interesting to see how they handle it and respond to some of these climate shifts. If they struggle,
Mm-hmm,
well, that probably means the whole outback is struggling because
mm-hmm,
they're
mm-hmm.
they're tough cookies, right? So,
Yep.
and if they're doing well, then that's probably a good sign maybe for some of the other species that live there. So, I think when we look at it from not only an ecosystem engineer, but then also a climate adaptation model, and then the bearded dragon because it is just so cool looking and all of its fun behaviors with its beard and head bobbing, and we'll talk about all this stuff. But the bearded dragon's also a cultural keystone for the indigenous Australian people because they've coexisted alongside these bearded dragons for millennia.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so I think from that aspect, it's they're just a fascinating creature that I'm so happy to introduce you to
Yeah.
today if you've not
Yeah,
heard of
yeah.
one before. Yeah.
I have yet to see one in the wild. I have seen plenty of water dragons up and down the coast of Australia. Yeah, they're everywhere. And the good news is, like we said, they're least concern,
Yes, that's
and
great news.
the populations are doing well from what we understand. Australia does have a strict no export policy, so
Yes, we'll talk about
all
that.
yeah,
It's for
yeah.
years they've had that. They're really
Yeah.
looking out for their
So
beardies.
there's no capturing bearded dragons in the wild and shipping them out of Australia or water dragons or any of these other species. So all the bearded dragons that are around the world are all captive bred.
Yes.
So the one that Angie had. Now, what I really want to talk about today is because this has been in the news, and I want to try to explain what's going on weather-wise. Why are we seeing these extremes? And as we record this in early February 2026, last week in Australia was this massive heat dome over, not quite half the country, but a big portion, especially New South Wales, Queensland, and Victoria. It got up to 50 degrees Celsius, which is 122 degrees Fahrenheit, which is insane. I think the hottest I've ever felt in my life was 118 when I was back in the Mojave Desert, and that was brutal. It's just 122 degrees, and it persisted all week. There's still wildfires ongoing in
Of course,
Victoria,
yeah.
which is a concern with this heat. And I'm wondering, okay, how does that impact the bearded dragon? So
Sure.
that's going on down here in this part of the world. Up where you're at, Angie, and I know you said it was cold today. It's really humid where I'm at today. In New Zealand, still, we've been warm, but still temperate. In the United States, at the same time, while Australia was under this heat dome, the parts of Canada, the United States, Russia, China, Mongolia was absolutely freezing, minus 30, minus 40 degrees. And that polar blast is still present. It's still frigid in that part of the world. And so what's going on? And I'm not going to argue climate change. It is happening before our eyes.
Well, I think, and I always like to make the clause of man-made climate change, right? Like
yes. Yep.
historically there was the ice age, and then there's been
Mhm.
other climate shifts, but those over tens of thousands of years.
Yes.
Not this rapid climate change that we've seen in the last 100 years since the Industrial Revolution.
Let's just accept it's happening. And from a scientific point of view, what can we expect? Because these are
Right.
extremes that are not normal. And that's
But
what
overall, the climate's heating up.
Yeah.
Overall.
Yeah. And that's where I want to explain what's going on. Because sure, global warming, it is getting warmer. The oceans
Right.
are getting warmer. We know
Oh,
that
yeah.
the
And
poles
more
are
acidic.
melting.
Yeah.
Yeah, the poles are melting. So we can't sit here and go, it's not happening when it is. It absolutely is. And my role as an educator is to come and say, I don't care what politician you elect. I don't care what your politics are. When it comes to climate change, this impacts you, me. I've said this on the podcast before. Those massive tornadoes hit the most conservative areas of the United States, and those are the people that suffer the most. Those communities, farming communities, where my relatives are, where your relatives are.
Mm-hmm.
So and I'm watching the weather down here, where my friends in Australia and my work colleagues are going through extremes and dodging fires. And and then you go to our friends in Europe or elsewhere in the world that are suffering, and all the people we interview, all the scientists and conservationists that are working in these extremes. So it's no longer what's the debate. It's we need to change now, and we need to push our politicians and get away from special interests. Again, both sides. I can look at both sides of it. If we just go to the United States, I can look at both sides. They're taking money from gas, oil, all these industries.
Mm-hmm.
That's why there's so much a slowdown on green energy, because special interests have gone in, because people care more about money than you and me and
Bearded
greater
dragons.
humanity. Yes.
And greater humanity, yes.
Yeah, because
it's very frustrating.
It's out of whack. And let me explain why.
Chris,
let me explain why. Yeah.
Well, it's so frustrating that no offense that you even are trying to explain this, because as an 18-year-old with very little background knowledge of anything, I wanted to study science. I wanted to do zoology. I loved animals, but I also was like, the climate's changing because of man-made greenhouse gases. It was known then, and that was in the 90s.
Yeah.
The 1900s. So
Yes.
I minored in environmental sciences because I was like, this will be important for me to know and be even more educated on moving in the future. That was a long time ago. And honestly, then it wasn't even as much alleged, well, it wasn't in politics, right? So there wasn't this debate and all this climate denial and science alternative facts, baloney, and stuff like that. And so it's just it really makes me want to like pull out my hair,
Yeah, yeah.
and
And,
because
and well, you're not alone, Angie. I mean, the world. I know it's hard because you're in the United States, and politics there are so divisive. And we do get some hate mail every now and then about evolution, about climate change, and I don't want to offend
mm-mm,
people's belief systems.
correct.
As an educator and as a scientist, Angie and I's role that we took on 8 years ago, we started this podcast, was to communicate science to the masses. And we're obviously doing a good job because you're listening, and we have, hundreds of thousands of listeners from around the world. And Angie and I have been very careful not to swing to the extremes. But when it comes to this, and we're living it now, Angie's freezing today, and it's winter in Florida. Sometimes it gets cold, but this storm, and I'm going to explain what's going on, is not normal. This heat dome over Australia is not normal. And the animals don't have air conditioning. The animals don't have heaters.
Chris and I have been known about climate change and been talking about it for forever, but now trying to promote animal conservation and helping people try to fall in love with these animals. If we're going to fight for the animals, this is part of the fight.
This is a big part. It has been, and we've talked about it, but just taking this example because so many of our listeners are experiencing this right now. So let me explain what's happening. It's energy. The climate system is awry because it is storing so much energy. Oceans are warmer, the atmosphere is warmer, pressure patterns are changing. So long-standing circulatory systems are changing. We know ocean currents are changing. We knew this 5-6 years ago, talking about African penguins. They used to have to go 20 kilometers off the coast. Now have to go 50, 60, 70. And their population is being decimated. African penguins are still slipping towards extinction. So all of that energy is not disrupted normally. Now, the heat dome is a high air pressure system. So it's pushing, hot air gets trapped and it pushes it down, and it keeps circulating. So without getting too much into weather patterns and whatnot, so this heat dome is kind of stuck, and it keeps feeding back. That hot air keeps feeding back. And you're getting 50 degrees Celsius temperatures for days. That, it's the 40s to 50s is what it's ranged. I've been watching it all week, and it's just horrific. And with all of this disrupted energy in our normal climate patterns that have been, for the last few thousand years since the end of the ice age, it's warmer down here, so that heat dome starts hotter. So maybe in the past 100 years ago or 200 years ago, there would be kind of a heat dome in Australia, but it wouldn't be quite as hot and wouldn't last quite as long. Okay, again, that energy and the disruption of patterns. Let me switch it to you, because watching the weather in the United States, seeing Michigan minus 20 degrees Celsius where you used to live, and I knew Florida was warm for a while, but now that it did sneak down your way. So the polar jet stream normally would stick up north, but it's weakening. The stream's weakening. And so you're seeing it dip down into the U.S., lower 48 states, where Houston, Texas was frigid, freezing.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. It's not normal. It's just not normal. And then if you looked over, because again, I was watching this all week. I'm watching the heat dome. I'm watching the freezing of the United States and North America. Then I look, and Mongolia and parts of Siberia are just like, I couldn't even imagine how people live there or animals live there. It was so cold because that polar frigid air is going further south. So you're seeing a lot of erratic weather patterns. And this is the new norm. Yeah, we're seeing extremes. We're seeing extreme hurricanes that come whipping through Florida. We're seeing extreme cyclones down this part of the world.
Yeah.
Yeah. So just to tie this up into animals, why this matters. Okay. It matters to us because it affects our lives. It does matter to these animals. It does matter to the bearded dragon. And let me explain why real quick. As resilient as they are, as they can resist these temperatures, because they do need to be warm. Angie mentioned that. Prolonged extreme heat can reach into those burrows that they burrow in to cool off. it does affect what they eat. Think about it. Insects, plants die off. It affects the whole food web. So even though the bearded dragon could shake off some hot days and be okay, other animals that it depends on, other, plants and microbes and all these
Right.
other things.
Well, and yeah, exactly. But even beard dragons alone, just to kind of skip forward in my notes a little bit, the eggs that they lay, the clutches that they lay, the females, and we'll talk about it when we get to repro, but they're temperature dependent. They have temperature dependent sex ratios like we see in our sea turtles. So if eggs incubate in these really high heats, it basically overrides the male genetics to produce basically a functional female. So it's, when most species need about a 50-50 ratio to have a healthy breeding population and to ward off conservation threats. And so, yeah, it could be that will be problematic. And I'm sure there's probably brilliant scientists looking into that right now and seeing if that's happening.
Well, and it's like they just say like food webs are collapsing quietly, so maybe
Oh,
not as
yeah.
dramatic. And these heat domes, duration matters. So if it's a 1 day or 2 day event, okay. But a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks, that's where it's getting detrimental.
Right.
Then the bearded dragons are looking at places to escape the heat, changing where they live. And it made me think of the pika when we did the pika. I remember
Mhm.
we talked about climate
Mhm.
change again,
Oh, yeah.
where they're noticing pikas are going higher and higher in the mountains to
Mhm.
escape the heat.
Yep. Yeah. So
Well,
are
that mountain,
trees. Trees are
yeah,
going higher
trees are
too.
moving. We
Mhm.
know trees are moving, and which is incredible. So what happens when that pika runs out of room? There's nowhere to
Yeah.
go.
Yeah.
In California,
Well,
that bakes all the time.
but I guess the way that I thought about it when I was 18 and 19 and starting to study some of this earth science stuff to learn more about the environment, I just visualized it. And I know if there's a scientist listening, bless your heart, I apologize in advance about earth science. But I just am a very visual person. I picture the earth, and then I had to learn all the layers. I don't remember what they are now, but there's lots of different layers. Anyways, in those layers deep down are oil and natural gas, which are primarily made of carbon. And our atmosphere, don't quote me on exactly what the percents are, but it's carbon, oxygen, nitrogen, other things. But there's like a ratio that was set a long, long time ago, hundreds of thousands of years ago, that helped bring all our life into being. And we work with the trees. They give us oxygen, we give them carbon dioxide, this great balance. So if you just visualize sucking out all of this carbon for the last 150 years, like maniacs, just sucking it out, stripping the earth of the resources and taking this carbon that's been buried underground. And now it's poof in the air, whether it's gasoline or, car emissions or whatever it is. Like, it just can't be good. It's just not balanced when you're doing something in such large volumes. So that's how I visualize it. And to me, it just, without no understanding, obviously I do know a lot about geochemical cycles, but really understanding all of that, just visually, of course, it's throwing off the atmospheric temperature and what's happening. And then
Well,
and then
okay,
on top
so
of that, we're cutting down
yeah,
all the trees. So I
yes,
mean,
that
it's like a
pulls carbon
ah,
from the atmosphere. Now, when you think of carbon dioxide. Okay, so Angie's right. That is carbon. The fuels are carbon, natural gas. Not all natural gases, but what we're
the
burning down
backbone.
all the
Hmm.
forests. When we burn down a rainforest, that releases so much carbon in the atmosphere. The trees pull in carbon
They
dioxide and produce
sequester it.
oxygen.
Hmm.
Yes, and they hold it in the soil. You asked 100 years ago, because, we did take all these classes when we were undergrads and in grad school. Most of our atmosphere is nitrogen,
Yeah.
so about 78%. That
I know
hasn't
it's
changed in
funny it's
100
not
years.
oxygen, right? I always thought that
No,
fact was
oxygen's
interesting.
it's about 21%
Yeah.
oxygen.
That's little.
Long time ago, because they can look in ice core samples, when oxygen was higher, that was when like insects were a lot bigger. They were
Ah,
massive because there
yeah,
was more
cool.
oxygen in the atmosphere. So today, that hasn't changed. Oxygen has not changed 21% from 100 years ago to today. argon gas, less than 1%, hasn't changed. Carbon dioxide has gone up by 40% in 100 years. So the Industrial Revolution in the 1800s, so when we started spewing, burning coal, all of these things, then the last 100 years with automobiles and, again, mass deforestation has released so much carbon in the atmosphere.
40%? I would have
Yes,
never
it's gone
guessed
up
that
40%
much.
increase. Yep. So that's,
Well,
and
no
then there's
wonder.
methane. Methane's gone up 2%, not 2%, double. Methane is doubled. Nitrous oxide has gone up 24%. Ozone has increased. And then some synthetic greenhouse gases are still being released. So these matter. These are impacting weather patterns. The Amazon, that's why Angie and I fight so much for the Amazon. If we lose that rainforest, that system, these weather patterns are going to go even worse. This is why it matters to you, but it matters for those animals. I mean, Angie can go into her home and warm it. I can do it here in New Zealand. In the heat, we do have air conditioning down here, but not like in Florida.
Well,
We
but
can escape it generally, but we're
ish. I mean, they're warning us that like if like our energy systems
brownouts
locally here can't handle it. They're like, turn
Yes.
your heat down and all the things because
That happened to Texas a couple years
yeah?
ago. We saw it and people were freezing. And we're lucky. We're wealthy.
Yes.
What about the peoples of Caruana Island that I talk about in New
know.
Guinea
Yeah.
who don't have air conditioning or heaters in the winter? What about the peoples of South America and Africa and Asia and the other billions of people that don't have what we have? It's time to wake up. And that's why I brought it up today, because I thought of the bearded dragon and I'm like, how are those suckers surviving? They are, but are they thriving?
Right.
That's the question. And I would argue under these conditions, they're not. So jump up the soapbox. We have a special guest coming up.
Yeah, stay with us. I promise. It's a little more uplifting.
Evolution will be super fast today, but we had to show off Pancake. So for those that are listening on audio, you can go to our YouTube channel, All Creatures Podcast, and see Angie holding this massive, that's got to be 24 inches, bearded dragon.
Isn't he handsome?
Pancake,
This is Pancake. Yeah. Our son Zachary renamed him. His former name was Mr. Xylo, which is a cute name, but Pancake is a better fit. And that actually describes the behavior that they do when they lay flat, because you can see kind of his big belly here. Oh, that's kind of a cute picture of all creatures.
Yeah.
So this is special guest number 1. Pancake. We love him very much. He's very happy to be on the podcast. I think he's a natural, he's a natural educator like us.
Yeah.
He's
yes.
Yeah, guys.
He's chill. He's really chill.
But I know we normally sometimes have my husband on here because he's worked with every animal under the sun. Yeah. He has not worked with bearded dragons. I was the zookeeper that worked with them. And we have a special guest that is now currently taking care of them at our house.
Well, welcome back to the podcast. I think it's been, at least 7 years last time you and I spoke on the podcast. Do you remember what animal we were talking about back then?
I think it was flamingos.
No, I think it was platypus. I remember clearly because I asked you, I think you were like 4 years old, and you were like, I'm like, where do the platypus live? And you were adamant they were in the Amazon. You were like, nope, they live in the Amazon. It was great. Anyway, Xander, tell me about Pancake. What are you holding?
So this is my pet bearded dragon, Pancake, and he's about 3 years old.
Yeah.
He usually likes to eat. He likes blueberries and he likes a bunch of greens. So
if I wanted to ask you, does he eat that? Because I know they're omnivores because I've done my research, but I would have thought lizards would just eat bugs or worms or something. But no, he likes that, huh?
Yeah. So unlike most lizards, he's an omnivore. So he eats like animals, but he also eats plants.
So he eats anything, huh?
Most anything.
Yeah. Now we know they're from Australia, right? But what else do you know about bearded dragons? Is it pretty easy to keep? Pretty fun to have?
They are fun to have, but you have to be ready to put in a lot of work because they are like a handful. You have to make salads, clean all their poop, and change the water out, keep the heat the right temperature. But if you can do all that, then they are really fun pets.
What's the temperature in his habitat?
So typically they need around 110 degrees and on the warm side, and then they need about 85 on the cool side.
Oh, wow. Wow. So you guys have like a nice big place to put him in?
Uh-huh. We have a
Yeah.
90-gallon.
Okay. Yeah, I imagine with your mom and dad both being zookeepers and zoo industry, they know how to take care of them and teaching you all that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
Any other cool facts about him? Do you just like hanging out with him on the couch while you watch TV?
yeah, we watch TV with him, and he also likes to run around the house and explore outside. And
Oh.
they do have a lot of like behaviors. So like sometimes males will head bob, and that's like basically like showing territory and saying that they're the boss.
Yeah. Now, do you take him on a leash outside? How do you let him outside?
So
So,
we
so
have
people listening, yeah, let their bearded dragons outside. Yeah.
we have a little harness that we put him on. So with a leash, cause just in case they are like mostly ground animals, but they can climb because of their claws. So he could just run up a tree, and we don't want that to happen.
No. Yeah. It'd be a while to get him down. So anything else cool about him? You just is a happy pet, like just incredible to have him.
Oh yeah, he's really cool. But so they also they like to go outside just like our dogs. He'll scratch on his cage and bump the glass, and he'll start looking around outside if he wants to go outside.
That's funny. That's funny. Now, can I ask you how he gets along with the dogs and the cats in the house?
So he gets along with Rainbow, our lab mix, pretty well because she's like chill, but Storm not so much. He's wild, so we just keep him away from Storm. And then Bear, she's kind of good.
Well, she's an old cat, so she just doesn't want to
Yes,
be bothered,
she's
right?
not
Yeah.
she's not that bad, but we still don't
Yeah.
trust her.
And then how's your little brother Maddox do with him?
He does good. I had to teach him a lot about how to hold him and how to just let him do what he wants to do. Oh,
Yeah.
but
And there he goes.
he's so but like once we taught Maddox how to do it, then he was good. We just
Yeah.
had to teach
Okay.
him to like let him do what he wants to do.
Yeah.
You got to
Yeah.
let them walk you, not you walk them.
So he's got a long lifespan, and are you taking him to college with you, or are you gonna leave him behind when you finally go to
Um,
college?
we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah. Argue with mom. Yeah, he's coming with me. All right. Yeah, in the dorms. All right, can you hold him up close to the camera so we get a good look at Pancake? He's so cute. There he is. Hey, Pancake. He's big. He's a big boy.
Yeah, he is a bigger boy.
Yeah. So last question, what's your favorite thing about Pancake?
I like how he runs, 'cause he's so cute when he runs. He picks up his feet and he picks up his chunky belly and he just runs really fast. I
Yeah,
also like
that's
how he
amazing.
eats, 'cause he eyes it, he looks at it, he closes one eye because since their eyes are on the sides of their heads, it's easier for him to see like that, and then he looks at it and he goes like this, and he goes and he eats the
And
bug.
grabs it. That's
And
awesome.
But he doesn't have bugs every day because we don't want him to be too fat and we want him to get a nice balance. So he has bugs
Hmm.
every other day.
Yeah. And you give him calcium powder, right? Because that's
Yeah,
important for his
every day we
bones and
give
everything.
calcium powder, and then twice a week we give D3.
Okay. All right. Well, Xander, it's so good to have you back. We're going to have you back sooner rather than later. We'll have to pick another favorite species of yours. But yeah, keep doing well, and keep kicking behind in baseball. Your mom always talks about how awesome you are out there. So yeah,
Yeah.
keep it up, and yeah, take care of Pancake.
Okay, bye. Pancake, say bye.
All right, welcome back, Angie. And it's always great to see your son, your firstborn.
Oh, I know. Proud parenting moment. Passing the torch. I think we're done with the podcast. And he nailed all the facts pretty well.
Yeah, we touch upon some other stuff, but yeah, Xander's so great. It's so great to see you and John raise your three boys and to have such a love for the natural world. I've seen that since they were born. So yeah, it's so great. You always get them outside, get them out in nature, and really appreciating that. Okay, back to bearded dragon. Let me get through evolution because there's some interesting stuff. Reptiles, 12,000 species.
Ooh, we got our work cut out for us.
Yes. 7,000 lizards, 4,000 snakes, 360 turtles, 26 crocodilians, and one special order. Come on.
Maddox was just playing with
Tuatara.
Stuffy that you sent. I believe you sent to Zach, but
Yes.
I mean, Zach still loves it, but Maddox found it and now he's sleeping with it every night. So Tuatara.
Yeah, the Tuatara. We got to get you down here to see Tuatara. So they're really, really
And
great.
if you haven't listened to the episode, everyone go find it, search up our website. It's a good one.
Yeah, they're just so unique. Its own order. They're ancient. I mean, ancient. So let me just jump ahead. The family is Agamidae, so iguana, lizards, Africa, Asia, Australia, Southern Europe. So some are called dragons, or dragon lizards, which I mentioned the water dragon. The one I really want to cover at some points, the frilled dragon.
That'd be fun, yeah.
Yeah, because it's the Dilophosaurus.
Yeah.
In Jurassic Park, and it spits in Jurassic Park. But yeah, that one we've got to do because that frill is just crazy that they just do that. And then the bearded dragons are Pogona is the genre, and then there's the 8 species. So to go in that. Reptiles, 300 million years ago is when they emerged. I mean, we came off reptiles as mammals. The dinosaurs came from reptiles. Ancient lineage. Really interesting when we start looking at bearded dragons when Australia broke away from Antarctica and it was the Gondwana, the supercontinent. So that happened about 45, 50 million years ago. And that's where all these animals in Australia got isolated. So we know the marsupials, we had no large placental predators. And that's why Australia is so unique. It's just so unique because for 50 million years, evolution's been doing its magic. And there's so many different lizard species that the Komodo dragon, we know, kind of branched there. They had this super big one that died out, I don't know how many thousands of years ago. About 20 to 30 million years ago, the earliest ancestor of these throat beards emerged in the lizards. And these were ones that were really built for the heat. Australia was warm back then. Like, go watch Prehistoric Planet. I know we talked quite a bit about it this year.
Love that one, yeah.
We in that last one, it's just so great, the Ice Age animals. And you go down to Australia and you have, the short-faced kangaroo and the giant wombats and all that. But it's really hot, really dry, while the northern regions of the world are under ice. So again, what's going on this week? You're under ice and it's super hot down here. So that's where they evolved. And then, the genre of Pagonia, it's about 15, 20 million years ago is where they emerge. And 2.5 million years ago, once that ice age changed and those short-faced kangaroos died out, giant wombats died out. Well, that's probably thousands of years. I don't know. But about that time is where you get this little speciation, little specialists, where you probably get the eastern bearded dragons, the western, where they're creeping into these forest regions, not quite into the rainforest of Australia, but yeah, and you get this kind of specialization that you see. So your bearded dragon lineage is millions of years old. So when you hold that dinosaur,
I know that's another reason why I care, right? Like, it's so incredible. They've been here for such a long time, and they've really have all these cool physiological adaptations to live in the Outback and do it well.
Yep. So there you go. Evolution, quick synopsis. Angie did talk about bearded dragons 10 to 15 years, but in the wild a lot less, 5 to 8, which is typical. The wild's tough. It's a tough place. But under Angie and John's special care, that Pancake's lucky because he's got and 3 boys that really love him.
Just
And
love
we'll
him
take
so
care of
much.
him.
I just like watching him sleep. He's the cutest. He actually goes to bed the easiest out of all my children. Well,
Yes.
Bear the cat's pretty good too. She's a good sleeper.
Yeah.
But yeah, around 8:30, once it's dark out, he's just like, let's go. I want to go to bed. Turn my lights off, please.
Yeah.
So it's cute.
Yeah. I loved Xander talking about how he runs. Maybe you could talk about that right now. The top speed.
Yes. So the top. Go ahead.
Yeah, up to 9 miles per hour is what I have, or 15 kilometers per hour. So is that what you're seeing?
That's what I'm seeing. And I always like to compare it to. So I typically jog about 4 to 6 miles per hour or 6 to 10 kilometers per hour. So a beardie's top sprint can beat me, but a trained sprinter, somebody who's faster and really going for it, definitely a human can run faster than a beardie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But they're fast. You know,
they're fast. Yeah, when they need to get away, it's book it. Let's go. Yeah.
Short bursts. And then Xander was talking about how he runs. So bipedally in the hind leg.
They definitely have to lift up that big pancake belly and then just go from there. So all 4 legs are running most of the time.
Yeah. Okay. Let's talk about the beard. Because you said you did a lot of beard. Tell me about the beard, because I know you did all your research because you had to learn all about Pancake.
Yeah, well, it's fascinating, right? Because I've seen his turn black, and I'm always like, oh my gosh, what am I doing? And so, is this a good thing, a bad thing? What does this mean? But in general, it can actually mean a lot of different things. And so, the beard itself, once again, both males and females have this beard, and it can be used for mating, aggressive displays, as well as heat management. So what'll happen is the scales in the throat pouch area will turn basically like jet black or slate gray, if you will. The beard will inflate, not like a frog, but it does puff out and get bigger to show off the black. And it's really important for communication in bearded dragons. Once again, as Xander mentioned, it's either like, hey, this is my territory, get out of here. Or once again, it can be the females can also show it too. Like, I'm not ready to breed with you right now. Get out of here. So it just depends. And I was just so fascinated. The rabbit hole I went down is like, okay, well, a bearded dragon's just hanging out, and then a potential mate or another member of its species, because they are solitary in the wild, except for breeding, walks by and they kind of lift their head up, maybe bob their head, and then show off their black beard. And they do it instantly. So it turns jet black. How do they do that?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that's the rabbit hole I went down. And the way that the bearded dragon turns their beard black is basically the melanophores. So the beard will turn black when melanin, that's a protein, in the epithelial cells of the skin, these granules, also known as melanosomes, basically are dark in color, and they rapidly disperse from the cell's center through these melanophores to the throat area in the skin. And that darkens that skin of their throat patch in seconds to minutes, basically through a neural hormonal signaling. So the hormone involved, we've talked about this before on the podcast. It's going to be MSH, otherwise known as melanocyte stimulating hormone, and that comes from the pituitary. And that helps disperse the melanosomes, this pigment, throughout their bearded region. And once again, they'll do this for threats or mating rituals or actually as thermoregulation. So it's pretty interesting too. Researchers have shown that the beard will change a little bit of color too, depending on their circadian rhythm. So there's like the endogenous circadian rhythm clock, where the skin will sometimes darken during the light phases of the day and then lighten back up during the nighttime cycles, when they definitely don't need to be displaying at nighttime when it's dark out and they aren't usually like breeding or
Mm.
fighting off their territory. So males, when they are breeding, their testosterone will be increased, and there is some significance that also can increase these bolder color changes, and making basically the neurohormonal feedback loop work faster. So yeah, black from pigment,
Yeah,
moving
it's
from
crazy.
one part of the cells to other parts, and heading towards the throat area where it's very, very visual to the other bearded dragon. And the reason why it works too is because bearded dragons do have good eyesight. So this helps them, navigate the insects that they need to capture that are moving, but it also helps them, once again, see the behaviors and the color changes that the fellow bearded dragons would do and interpret what that means. So, yeah.
Yeah, no, yeah, Xander did mention that. He did talk about how he sees his food and then he's wasting, goes, grabs it.
Yeah, definitely good vision. And then I don't know if Xander talked about it, but I've always loved reptiles or bearded dragons, especially because they have this what they call the pineal third eye precision. So on the top of their head, they love it if you they love the bottom of their throat gently stroked, and then the top of their head like with one finger.
Mhm.
But up there, they have what's this like third eye. It's not a true eye, but on the top of the head, they do have photoreceptors that can detect UV and shadow changes. And this is to help them figure out basking, timing. Is it cloudy? Is it not cloudy? Helps bearded dragon optimize getting the vitamin D that they so is so important for their bone health. So yeah, I just love
Yeah.
that little area there. Their
Yeah,
third
yeah,
eye. That's why they're
yeah.
so wise and just calm and cool.
Yeah, they are cool. The thermoregulation is kind of where I
Mhm.
went with today. That was kind
Yeah.
of the theme, thinking about that heat
Yeah.
dome and them surviving it and surviving in these harsh parts of Australia. And as you mentioned, even Xander talked about it, 110 and 85 degrees Fahrenheit. Their preferred body temperature is 95 to 100 degrees Fahrenheit, which is 35 to 38 degrees Celsius. And they do, tolerate heat. They're like,
Mhm.
they're cold-blooded, right? So they have to
Sure.
go out, meaning they need to get that sun warmth to warm their bodies up. That's what made, I just remember from Tuatara, one of the coolest things about them is they could really withstand cooler weather.
I know, it's
Wha-
so
Yeah,
incredible. Rare.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, where not a bearded dragon. Like bearded dragons couldn't survive in New Zealand. Uh, Out in the wild, they need that warmth.
Yeah.
But their body systems, this is where, again, the physiology just blows me away. I didn't realize their immune system is dependent on body temperature, which makes sense, but their immune response is thermally activated. So when they're warmer, their immune system to fight off all of these bugs, not insects, but, microbes and stuff, that bacteria and things that they might get to fight off infection or
Yeah.
illness. When they're warmer, they fight off illness a lot better.
Yeah. It's
Yeah,
all
that's
tied together.
yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. Other thing is, they can shift their metabolism, so they don't hibernate like other animals, but they do slow down, like in the really heat of the summer, where say insects might not be as plentiful. Plants obviously aren't growing in that heat, so
Yes,
I imagine, yeah,
I learned all
yeah.
about it right before we adopted Pancake. He was actually had been in, it's called brumation, is what they call it in bearded dragons, where he had just holed up for about 6 weeks and gone off food and water for the most part. She said she could drip a little water in his mouth. He wasn't sleeping. He just wasn't active or feeding.
Mhm.
He was just
Yeah.
extra chill, which is hard to believe because he's already so laid back. But yeah, the rumination, it depends. Not all of them do it, but definitely during cooler seasons, the wild bearded dragons will possibly go through this brumation, which is once again the type of hibernation. But yeah, so it's kind of interesting that he did that under human care. Like his body just knew that it was colder here in Florida, and it's time for that.
Yeah. Well, the other thing, because I want to ask you a question next, is their digestion depends
Mhm.
on body temperature. So when they're
100%.
warmer,
Yeah.
they digest food better. So like you said, when it's cooler, their metabolism slows down, digestion slows way down.
Oh, yeah.
And then when it warms up, the enzymes in their digestive system are more active and they digest their food more readily. So that's really interesting. Now, you talked about Pancake.
Mm-hmm.
Why? Why do they flatten their body? What's going on?
To cool down or to heat? No, to heat up.
Yeah. Is it more surface area, right? They're
Yeah, it
providing
makes them
more
bigger.
surface area.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So they can get more. So when you see bearded dragons, especially the ones under human care, they are a little chunky, but they do spread out. I remember
Yep.
seeing them and they're like Pancake, which is
Yeah.
great. It's such a
Yeah.
cute name. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and then of course too, they will just sometimes change color too, or darken their skin under extreme heat, and that's basically to actually reflect some infrared, and it basically reduces solar heat gain. Well, and the other fun behavior that bearded dragons do to help cool them down is actually the open mouth gape. So they will open their mouth to basically evaporate water from their mouth lining, to basically prioritize cooling when oxygen is scarce because of the hot air and like the wind's not blowing, the air is really still and hot. So,
Yeah.
and speaking of fun stuff, when it's really hot out, the bearded dragon will do cloaca evaporative cooling. So when they're under extreme heat stress, they squeeze water out of the cloaca for targeted evaporation. And so that helps keep their core internal heat down when it's really, really hot out. More cooling.
Yeah. Or, not being on the hot ground. And
Mhm.
I mean, your house, you have nice cool tile. So,
Yeah.
Pancake can cool off and regulate as needed. But
Yeah.
no, they're incredible. Diet in the wild, you've covered a lot. I mean, insects, spiders, you talked about mice. So they do go for that
Yeah.
protein,
Well,
the plant matter. Yeah.
did Xander mention our worm farm?
No.
Okay, because
So
I
you
will
have a
tell you
worm
this,
farm.
Chris. I was pretty sure we are going to get a bearded dragon in 2026 for the boys. But what was not on my 2026 bingo card was not only becoming a bearded dragon mom, but also a worm farmer. So
Okay.
the lovely person that I adopted the lovely person that adopted Pancake from had done a lot of research and became a super worm breeder. So, and had this whole getup of different stages of larva and pupa and
Mm.
adult phases and egg phases, all the phases. I apologize to any entomologists listening to this. You're probably. But anyways, it's all these shelf containers, this drawer set, and we feed them and we clean up after them, and they do their full life cycles, and then we feed them out when they're in the super worm phase to Pancake. So yeah, I've been learning a lot about about it, and it's so fascinating, and the kids are super into it so not only do we have to take care of Pancake, but now we have to take care of his food. They eat carrots,
Yeah.
they live in
That's awesome.
they
Yeah.
live in oats and bran. I mean,
Mhm.
it's incredible what the owner had put into doing this, because of course you can just buy insects at the store, but that's also really expensive and you have to drive to the store. It's like all of the things. So yeah, so I'm a worm farmer. Yay.
From blueberry farmer to scientist
Oh my
to worm
gosh.
farmer.
Yeah.
Full circle,
They're all
Angie.
my
Full
favorite
circle.
though. I love
Yeah, I
learning,
know.
and so it's super fun. But yeah, I mean, as far as eating goes too, they are, they're omnivores, and they're generalists, right? They're in the desert.
Mhm.
They'll take whatever protein they have. They get a lot of water from their food, especially in the desert. So that's really important way that they stay alive. And as I know, Xander mentioned how they hunt insects, and they'll even do the same thing with like uh, greens and leaves that they want to eat, but they'll eye it or whatever. But then the tip of the tongue is super sticky, and so it really helps like grab insects and bits of plants and pull them into their mouth when they're swallowed. And then they will move their tongue out, not like a snake, but they will flick it to help basically pick up tiny scent particles from surfaces and then in the air. And then they'll press their tongue to a sensory organ on the roof of their mouth to help identify, is this good food? Is this something I should eat? Or is this like a new object? So it's fun when we see that behavior related to either eating or just when we put enrichment in his enclosure and things like that.
Yeah. Now, what eats them? Birds of prey, wedge-tailed eagles. I've seen them. Kites and hawks. I've seen them over there. Large falcons, snakes, large lizards. So the monitor lizards. I mean, there's always a bigger fish. Isn't that a famous line from a Star Wars movie or something? There's always a bigger lizard out there that could eat them. And then you get the foxes, the feral cats, occasionally, wild dogs. Maybe dingoes might get them, but yeah, so that's not ideal. But they are, they sit in the lower middle end of the food chain when it comes to bigger creatures.
Except
but again,
for one
yes.
very, very intense creature in Australia. So remember at the beginning of the podcast where I talked about
Yes, here we
how
go. Okay.
how they're a little bit
Okay,
like
let me guess.
honey
Black
badger?
mamba? No, not black mamba. That's Africa.
Yeah, wrong continent. But yes, close.
Inland taipan?
So I might be pronouncing this wrong, so I apologize to the entire continent of Australia, but the elapid snakes, which include the cobras and the taipans, am I saying that right?
So,
Taipans?
taipans. I said inland taipan.
Oh, you did?
One of the
Okay.
most, yes, I think, I always send you pictures when I go over there and see the zoos. It is one, if not, I think the most venomous snake in the world. So it is on our
Okay.
list
Mm-hmm.
to cover. So
Well,
it can survive.
Then
like a honey
this
badger?
is probably
Yeah.
the superpower of the week of the bearded dragon, besides being darling when
Okay.
they sleep and just
I
letting you
didn't come across that.
pet them. Yeah. So one of their superpowers is this snake resistance. So bearded dragons, it's incredible. Researchers have studied it, and they have a unique glycosylation, I'll explain that in a second, mechanism that makes them more resistant to the neurotoxins of cobras and taipans, to their venom, than other Australian lizards. Researchers think it's selective evolution for predator avoidance because they are kind of chunky and fat. And yes, they can run bipedally, and yes, they can go up trees, but they're not super fast. It's not their main mechanism of defense. So what I found out, at least about the central bearded dragon, is that they can resist these deadly neurotoxins through sugar. So it's crazy. Basically, what happens is on their nerves, in their skin, they have a special carbohydrate. So that's why it's called an N-glycosylation. That's basically stuck on the nerve, and it jams up the venom docking site. So the venom will come in, but it can't actually bind to
do its job.
do its job on
Yeah.
the neurons, because most of these neurotoxins, that's what they do. They bind to the neurons, and they make the animal either convulse or paralyzed a lot of times, and a lot of them suffocating. Anyways, it's not a way that you want to die, obviously, as everybody in
No.
Australia knows.
No.
Yeah, so basically the bearded dragon has this it basically is glued a giant sugar brush on top of the lock that the venom would fit into on the nerve. And yeah, it's there. And the receptor is going to be the nicotinic acetylcholine receptors. So this bulky.
How in the heck?
I
was going to say, how in the heck is an inline taipan going to try to eat Pancake? Pancake was massive. So this is the younger ones, right? So this is...
Maybe, probably.
It's got to
sure.
be the younger one. The younger ones are easy to get picked off. I read that snakes like to go after the juveniles. So at that age, they've got super defense. That's crazy. That's awesome.
Yeah, how fun is that? So, yeah, and it's not. Yeah, it's obviously there's other species out there that we've covered on the podcast that don't seem to mind cobra bites, but they're doing other ways to stop and block the venom.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Way to go,
No, it's
Pancake.
awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Now, what other behaviors? We've covered a few, but what other fun behaviors are with these bearded dragons?
Yes. Well, they're not a very vocal creature. They may hiss. Pancake's never hissed at us because, well, I think he's never upset with us, at least thus far. But in general, in the wild, bearded dragons are diurnal, which means they're mostly active during the day, and they are going to just rest at nighttime. And I'm not sure if Xander mentioned it, but they will wave their arm. So a bearded dragon will stand on 3 legs and wave one of its forearms kind of in a slow circular pattern. It looks like it's waving hello. It is not waving hello. Researchers think that it might be used as a sign of submission or for species recognition. They're really not sure. Uh, Females have been known to do the arm wave to avoid aggression from males, especially if he's head bobbing. The bearded dragons seem to know what the wave means, but we're still trying to figure it out. And once again, they're a solitary species, and so they are pretty territorial and will only be seen hanging out with another bearded dragon during breeding season, or basically just for the act of breeding. And dominant males will ready himself to fight off any other male in its area to defend territory, food, resources, and of course competition for a female. And usually aggressive. And the way the bearded dragons see it is that any male approaching it unless it is showing submissive behaviors is definitely a threat, and they'll probably attack it. And sometimes males will even attack females just to make sure that they keep their territory. Other than that, I found a really cool study about bearded dragon intelligence, and they've been shown to perceive this illusion, specifically the Delboff illusion. I'm probably pronouncing that right. But in an experiment at the University of Padova, the bearded dragons were presented with 2 different sizes plates with the same amount of food. And the bearded dragon chose the smaller plates more often than they chose the larger ones, showing that they were able to perceive the illusion and interpret that a larger plate doesn't always mean more food. And fun fact, this is the first time this has been documented in reptiles. So pretty cool stuff.
I think in another life you would have loved to have been an animal behaviorist. I mean, I know you've studied it and you've researched
I did study it, but not enough to like run these experiments. Oh man, yes, I could nerd
So
out
cool.
about how much more I want to learn about it. And yeah, I think more specifically cognition. Well, cognition is really
Yeah.
pastime hobby of mine, and then I do also like social hunting behavior that we see with like our painted dogs and things. Yeah, so fun. But anyways,
It's
different
incredible,
podcast
yeah.
for a different day.
Yes.
So
Yeah. Okay. Well, we talked about this in sea turtles. I would have thought, okay, more females. That means, male could breed 20 females. We get more eggs, and that's good for the population. But it's not. We know it's not, especially like sea turtles. But the ocean's huge. The deserts of Australia's huge. Less males, less fit males. How about that? Males that are stronger and can survive passing on those genetics means even though there's tons of females, less of them are being bred. So the sex ratio, we want to keep it at 50-50 as close as we can to maintain population. So it's not a good thing. It's really not.
no,
Yeah.
no, definitely not. So yeah, and speaking of laying eggs, the inland bearded dragon will reach sexual maturity around 1 to 2 years of age, and mating will occur in the Australian spring and summer months of September to March. However, under human care, bearded dragons don't seem to be super seasonal and can breed year round. And when it is breeding season in the wild, males have a very showy courtship that they use to attract females. I actually had John like charade it out for me. I was like, because we keep talking about this event we want to do at the zoo sometime, where it'll be on Valentine's Day, but we'll do like animal courtship behaviors and make people like act things out. But anyways, send in your recommendations. We gotta get this going for next year. But anyways, what the male will do is when he's starting to court the female bearded dragon, he'll bob his head, he'll wave his arms, and he'll stomp his feet in front of the female. So he's very, very visually active about wanting her to like him. And then if she shows, I guess, interest or lack of aggression, right? She doesn't start aggressing towards him or head bobbing or something like that. If she shows interest, then the male will proceed to chase her and then go ahead and copulate with her or get in the position to copulate. And upon copulation, the female will basically be able to store sperm if she needs. So she has these very wide oviduct crypts, and enable her to do is lay potentially 2 or more clutches off of one male's sperm. So that's probably a really big evolutionary adaptation for this hot climate. And like Chris said, to find males, and you never know when you're going to come across another one, that type of thing. So that's a pretty cool adaptation that the female bearded dragons have. And after copulation, the male goes away, probably looking for another female to breed. But the female will go ahead and dig a burrow and lay about 24 eggs per clutch. And some resources, depending on what species it is and where they live and what's happening in their environment and their nutrition, that they can lay up to 9 clutches per year. And the eggs will incubate in this burrow for about 67 to 80 days, once again, depending on the species and the climate and all of that. And under human care, bearded dragons' eggs will incubate for about 55 to 75 days. And unlike birds, when I say incubate, the female bearded dragon does not sit on the eggs or do anything to regulate temperature. So, as Chris mentioned, with climate change and sex ratios and all of that, the eggs rely completely on environmental warmth, which usually in the desert is pretty fine, for their 50 to 80-day incubation period. So, with the climate changing and becoming even warmer, we might end up with more females. So, yeah. And then when the cute little bearded dragons hatch, they're fully independent. There's no parent around, and there's no mom feeding them, none of that. No, the mom's not teaching them anything. There's just all instinct. And they basically just dig out of the burrow and start eating and finding food, and disperse immediately from the other baby bearded dragons. So, yeah, the hatchlings, just off they go, which is always fascinating to me. And I could nerd out about that because it's just, wow. Let alone in the harsh desert climate, right? Like, it's one thing to like emerge and be like in a nice, comfortable
Yeah.
area, but they're like thrown into the desert, and yeah, it's really fascinating. So yeah, there's not a lot of parenting investment, like I said, but basically the evolutionary trade-off is that a lot of energy goes into producing, for the female to produce these multiple clutches, and using stored sperm, so that she doesn't, that uses all of her energy and she doesn't have much left for actually like maternal care or anything like that. The hatchlings are on their own.
Yeah. Reminds me when you talk about the hatching. I remember it was Planet Earth, the Galapagos racer. Remember that lizard? I
Yeah.
don't. It wasn't a marine iguana. Maybe it was a young one, but it was out racing all of those racer snakes. Yeah, those little guys getting away from everything. But yeah, so I mean, the overall least concern. So they're doing well,
Yeah. Yeah.
and
It's a good
again,
news story.
yeah, I mean, there's pressures because we know poor Australia, a lot of invasive species, some loss of habitat, fragmentation habitat, and then, like we talked about, these erratic weather patterns. I mean, I know the fires can have an impact too on everything. So yeah, I mean, but they're doing fine. They're doing generally well. We have a lot more other species in dire need, but is there an organization out there? I'm sure there are tons for like human care, but you really outlined the commitment that
Yes.
you
Yeah.
and
So I
John.
definitely want to
Yeah,
stress, I think
yeah,
my
yeah,
slide says bearded dragons as pets. It says, don't do it, ... or at least definitely do a lot of research, and then ... If you're going to get one, adopt or rescue one if you can, because there's
yeah,
tons
yeah,
out there. But yes, I say that from a very loving place of caring for them in a zoo, where the zoo paid for everything. So that was nice.
yeah.
And then now doing it myself.
Mhm.
I went to the market on Saturday morning in the cold to get microgreens and collard greens for the bearded dragon. So that, let alone stopping at the store to get the discoid roaches and the, all of the things, the worms. I'm a worm farmer. It has an electrolyte bath that it soaks in twice a week. So, I mean, yes, but we love Pancake, and I think it's a good fit. And I'm glad that I could help give him a new home when the previous owner unfortunately couldn't keep caring for him.
Mhm.
So just do your research. I say that with any pet, even with a dog,
Yeah.
with a dog, with a
Mm.
cat. I mean, now thanks to the internet, of course, you can go down any rabbit hole. So try to prompt it with the right questions. But if you are getting a dog, do a little research on what type of dog is a good fit for your family as far as size, a mixed breed, what works, because there's a lot of personality differences and traits just in dogs, and then cats. Well, you got to be a cat
Yeah.
person,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but no, I'm proud of Australia. They, of course, don't let don't want any taken from the wild, but there is still sometimes illegal pet trade collections, even though there are protections. So definitely be on the lookout for that. But most of them, at least especially here in North America, are bred under human care. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. And then as far as organizations go, I want to give a big shout out because we did talk about bearded dragons and their role in the ecosystem, kind of in the middle of the food web, and how they help spread seeds, and they also eat a lot of insects, and they also act as prey, not for cobras and taipans, but for other larger animals. And so because of that, it people do want to make sure and conserve them, and just because they're so cool, and they have this long just this long cultural background being from Australia. So a big shout out to the Bush Heritage Australia. They actively protect bearded dragons on multiple reserves, Charles Darwin, Uruti, and Yorka. They do this through feral cat and fox control and destocking habitat so that it can actually recover from these invasive species. And they also do native vegetation restoration. And then I secondly would love to give a shout out, definitely on my bucket list, to the Taronga Zoo at the Taronga Conservation Society in Australia. They have bred
It's
and released.
amazing. It's
Yeah, you've been,
amazing.
right?
I'm trying to get you there. That was the behind the scenes tour, and
Yeah,
I saw half the reef in the frozen freezer,
yeah,
and Pip
yeah.
was like, "That's it." I'm like, "What'd you expect?" You know,
I love Pip.
I know. Like this massive pool, like a frozen coral. It
Sperm's
was just
really small, or the not sperm, but uh,
the
gametes are
coral.
really small. Gametes are
Yeah,
really small. So
yeah, it's so
that's so.
funny. Yeah.
But yes,
Oh,
Taronga, we
Taronga
love it
Zoo's
there,
amazing.
and their conservation society in Australia has bred captive bearded dragons and then released them to help bolster wild populations. And they, of course, focus on research and rehabilitation. So much love to the Bush Heritage Australia and Taronga Conservation Society in Australia.
Oh, they do a ton of work. I mean, the wildlife relief for all the wild animals, and Australia Zoo does a lot of work too. It's Australia loves their wildlife. They
They
absolutely do.
do.
Yeah,
They do a great
yeah,
job.
yeah. They do. They do. Well, enjoy Pancake. I know you
I
got to go
will.
put Pancake to bed. It's getting
Yes.
late in Florida. Just stay warm, everybody. Just absorb some of this. Change is coming. I feel it. There is a lot of positive stuff going on in the world. These weather patterns are erratic. I know that. And we do get on soapboxes and talk about it, but realize I know the younger generation is really fired up, and us Gen Xers, Gen Zels, what Angie is, pretends to be. And,
I'm a zennial.
and there's plenty of boomers out there. I mean, it's just from all in between. We
Yeah,
do care about the natural world, and
absolutely.
change has. I mean, we're talking about things today that 10 years ago, when Angie and I talked in my office, talking about doing research and then talking about the podcast, things have changed a lot in a decade,
Yes.
and in a lot of positive ways. So keep up,
Yes.
keep up the work. Check us out on YouTube, and just take care, and take care of you and your family and your pets.
Yeah, and think about it for bearded dragons and really for any species that you want to help conserve. You can always vote with your dollar. You can always vote green. So where we spend our money and how we spend our time really does help determine markets, and it forces companies to take a look at how they're investing and
Yeah,
what they're investing in. So yeah,
yeah,
that's the simplest thing you can do over here. And if you're in Canada and it's cold, you can help the bearded dragons by just voting with your dollar and helping push more green policies.
yeah. Take care.
So thank you, everyone.